New York.
Okay. Rex Heuermann. I'm an architect. I'm an architectural consultant. I'm a troubleshooter. Born and raised on Long Island.
Okay.
Been working in Manhattan since 1987.
Oh, wow.
Very long time.
Okay. So,
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear the thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Well, we're going to continue our analysis of Rex Heuermann's 2022 interview. And in this episode, we're going to deal with 5 key moments that really stood out and some of the insights that come out as a result of that. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you're enjoying this episode, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. So the first key moment for me came right at the beginning, where he is asked to identify himself, describe himself, where are you from, who are you, and when he mentions Long Island, there's a long blink, a kind of shutting down of the viewer, and then also a little bit of a negation, a blink and a slight shake of his head. Check this out.
I'm an architect. I'm an architectural consultant. I'm a troubleshooter. Born and raised on Long Island.
okay.
Been working in Manhattan since 1980.
So you really do have to watch this on slow motion to appreciate it. You see, for the first time, there's a long blink and a kind of a shake of the head, and also the sort of upside down coat hanger expression in his mouth, where he seems to be saying, it's no big deal that I'm from Long Island. Don't think about the fact that I'm from Long Island. He seems to not be very comfortable with the fact that he's got to acknowledge Long Island. Why do you think that could be? The other thing that I think is interesting is he refers to it as Long Island. He's not more specific. He doesn't say I'm from Massapequa Park or Gilgo Beach, but it makes it much more broad, and then he emphasizes how long he's been in Manhattan. And that is sort of where he gets cut off, where he says, I've been here a really long time, and he has. Something else that also really stands out in this little clip is the fact that he makes eye contact with the camera. What is happening there, he is conscious, self-conscious of the fact of what the viewer might be thinking. And this actually fills him with a little bit of trepidation. And so every time he makes eye contact with the camera in this interview is also a little bit of a tell. And now let's go on to the second key moment, and it's not really so much a body language thing, except that he's contradicting himself. He's saying that a very important characteristic needed in his job is patience, but then he says that he's also an impatient person, and I believe that he is. Although I think there's a different kind of patience. I think he can be patient in certain ways, but I also think he can be someone whose feelings and emotions can perhaps overwhelm him at times. But what do you think? Is patience an important quality for a serial killer?
What do you think is the most important qualities a person in your position dealing with the DOB must have?
Patience.
That's funny. I was hoping you would say that.
Yeah. Patience, and I don't like to use the word tolerance, but sometimes you have to.
Yeah.
Client. Because most clients, they don't understand what I have to do, why I have to do it, what it takes to get done.
Yeah.
And when you're dealing with somebody in the city, whether it be a clerk at the counter who has to enter data entry, or if I'm dealing with the borough commissioner of Manhattan, you need the patience, because who knows what the person before you did, Sometimes they have very bad days.
Yeah.
I've
Like everybody,
actually, and he was dealing with the clerk at the certificate of occupancy counter, didn't know what he was doing. I'm getting impatient. I go, excuse me. Took his paperwork, explained to the clerk what he needed, then explained to him what he needed to do, then move over. Then I took care of what I needed to do. Having all of these capabilities in-house gives me an advantage over other people because I have my own staff.
Yeah.
Most architects will go to an outside consultant.
Like yours.
No, not like mine, called an expediter.
Okay. Okay, that's what the expediter
The expediter, they understand how to file, they understand the administrative procedures. Where I exceed that is I have the license to practice architecture, so when I go to the city, I can tell them how I feel and what I think they should do. And I do that.
Part of the business, which is it's my understanding that you're kind of a facilitator with the Department of Building. Is that correct? But please tell us.
That's correct, but much more.
Okay.
Now, for the fourth key moment, I'm more interested in what he's saying, his statements, than the body language. And so one of the statements that stands out is this one.
Having all of these capabilities in-house.
One just wonders if there's an analogy to the capabilities Heuermann had in his own home, perhaps in the basement. And why might that be important?
Gives me an advantage over other people because I can tell them how I feel and what I think they should do.
The other thing that comes out in his mannerisms here is where the host is just trying to find out what he does, and he goes to a lot of pains to try and explain, almost in an indignant way, that I'm not like everybody else, I'm special. And then the fourth key moment is his acknowledgement that when he says, I learn to understand people, I think there's a indirect admission there that he didn't understand people, or probably even more important, people didn't understand him, that this was kind of an issue. And we know that it was in his life as a young man, as a man who couldn't get a girlfriend at school, as a outsider, someone who was bullied when he was in high school. And so when he's in Manhattan, he learns both how to understand people in a certain sense, and the question then is, does he learn how to understand people in another sense, in another secret sense as well?
I think it's taught me more about how to understand people, because dealing with the technical aspects is something a person can learn. Mm-hmm. You go to school and through an architectural program. You work for the experience of doing architecture. You get your license to practice. As your time goes on, you learn about the buildings and about the codes and the different buildings of time frames. I'm dealing with a building from the 1880s right now. You know how they react. But it's the people, how they're all so different, and how you deal with the people, I think, is one of the more interesting aspects that have come out of this.
Yes. Okay.
I do think the most profound moment of the entire interview is where the hammer comes up, and that the interviewer then, just in a very weird, coincidental way, says, "Oh, it's not something you would do to. It's not something you would do to someone." And then there's a very big facial reaction. It's a very, very telling, I believe, response to that trigger, to that suggestion. It's when he mentions the hammer, the host quips that the hammer would never be used to persuade someone, and that is when this expression leaks out. Of course, body language and facial recognition, it's not an exact science, but what we appear to be seeing here, one possibility, is Heuermann taking sheer sadistic pleasure at the mere idea on camera of persuading someone with a hammer. The moment the host suggests persuading someone with a hammer, at that exact moment, Heuermann does the eyes closed thing again. So he's blocking off certain thoughts that are surfacing while also trying to block off the tangent the host is taking.
When I need to persuade something.
Not someone.
Something.
I mean, just look at the body language in context in the screen grabs from 17 minutes, 13 seconds. And this is also why body language and statement analysis have to be done in concert and with a detailed knowledge of the facts and context the suspect faces within his or her own fabric. At 17 minutes, 38 seconds, when Heuermann is asked a very intimate question, well, it's intimate if one answers it authentically, which he does, we suddenly see very blocked off body language. He answers it authentically in the sense that he even mentions his father, he mentions some artifacts from his home situation, the workbench, the fact that his father is a woodworker. And so this is why the body language is, I believe, really authentic and also very significant.
If you were a tool or an object to help you in your to help you to bring your business to greater heights, what would it be?
That's an interesting question.
I know.
Because for what I do, we have to have so many tools in the toolbox.
Just one.
Just one.
Just one. Or an object. It doesn't have to be a tool. It can be an object.
You know what? Yeah. I know.
All right.
One of the things I learned from my father was furniture building.
Okay.
He was an aerospace engineer and built satellites. And
runs in the family, building things.
And built furniture at home. And I still build it in the same exact workshop.
So?
I have one tool that's pretty much used in almost every job. And it's actually a cabinet maker's hammer.
Oh, okay, and cabinet maker hammer. Okay.
It is persuasive enough when I need to persuade something.
Not someone.
Something. And it always yields excellent results. Yeah. And at the end of the project, and it always yields excellent results.
So I find it interesting when he talks about this concept of learning to understand people. One of the first things he mentions is when you're at school. So that does seem to be what's floating in his gray matter. And then the other thing, he talks about time frames. And if you think about a serial killer case, it is all about time frames, isn't it? How relevant is all this to the Heuermann case, to the Long Island serial killer case? Well, time will tell. I've said before that often in this sort of thing, statement analysis, you get some of the most valuable insights right at the beginning in the unscripted moments and then also right at the end, which are also unscripted. And that is exactly what happens here. In the beginning, you have him giving something away when he talks about home, Long Island. And then he gives something else away in the very last moment where the host, who's very amicable, very affable, says to him, aren't you going to smile? And that you can, and he kind of says, that is, or something like that. He kind of makes a bit of a flop. Ready? In the very last moment of the interview.
Can you smile?
Where he shows his social anxiety, shows his awkwardness, the thing that he's been trying to hide for the full 20 minutes of the interview, that finally leaks through. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.